Welcome to the Fireplace, a warm and welcoming space where we discuss all things cultural diversity and multiculturalism. In this NAIDOC Week episode, I'm talking to Lalania, founder and director of Paperbark Cultural Consultancy. And in that line, we would also like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that the land we are having this episode belongs to people that have been here since time immemorial. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's been an amazing NAIDOC Week so far. I've been to several events and it's been captivating, very insightful and beautiful. Tell me, this year's NAIDOC Week theme, the next generation, strength and legacy. Would you please take us through this?
So the next generation strength, vision, legacy is a really important NAIDOC Week theme, I believe, and has come at the right time for our younger generation as well as our older generation and everyone in between. The reason I say that is because we have a lot of hurting young people who, through intergenerational trauma and through the atrocities of the past, of the dark history of our country here in Australia, and the displacement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island families all across the nation, the younger generation, I feel, have stored that more through the stories from their elders, through taking them through the journeys of taking them back to dormitories and showing them the institutions and the different reserves, missions and communities where the grandparents were placed. And so I really feel that this year's theme is a real positive for us to be able to turn those tables and to create a space where these young people have a voice and they're able to see that our future doesn't have to be defined by our past. It's really important for us to know our past as Aboriginal descendants. My mother was part of the stolen generation and taken as a 2-year-old and placed in a dormitory in Daintree and then moved away to Townsville to live with a white matron to assimilate to be white until she was 16. And so for me firsthand, I know that my children and my children's children, I have grandchildren, and I have 4 amazing young men, my sons, who have heard all of these stories from their grandmother and have walked through those paths of going up to the Daintree dormitory and having a look through and listening to not just the negative things that have happened to their grandmother, but also the positive things that have come from her being taught how to mould, I guess, and to walk in this world of Western society and the way that the British and the different cultures have come through and influenced the way that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people live.
Wow. How is the First Nation culture thriving in the new culture diverse Australia that we have become?
I think our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island brothers and sisters all across Australia, both young and old, some find it easier to thrive in a new subculture of what our culture really is. So it's evolved over time from traditional practice. Some still are able to hold on to that, and some it's been lost, some of it as well, because of the assimilation policies and the white Australia policy of only last generation, my mother's generation. That spanned over 4 different generations across Australia, from the 1800s through to the 1970s was when those different acts and assimilation policies were abolished. So I guess it's a balance between holding on to the old and evolving and shaping it into the new. For example, dilly bag making or weaving or art practices or hunting practices on country. Not all clan groups, nations and tribes across Australia practice that because it was lost along the way with the forbidden language, forbidden practices, etc. So it's like we've evolved into where in different parts, I can't speak for all of Australia because we're split into hundreds of different clan groups and tribes, but in different parts of Australia, particularly metropolitan areas, a lot of that has to evolve into a more Western way of doing things. So for example, you have dancing. Dancing, where I come from, a lot of it is for ceremony practices. When you come to the city, it's for entertainment. And so there's that kind of, you still want to practice all of those ways of dance and song and story coming through that. And you want everyone to embrace it. But the initiation practices, the men's and women's business, all of that those ceremonies are initially designed for, and the reason why they're there, it's kind of moved away from that.
Right.
Because of our past.
Right. Wow. In your opinion, how should migrants trade when they are assimilating into the new Australia that they find themselves in?
I think that migrants coming to Australia, they have their own story and they have a very resilient way of living and a resilient way of looking at their new beginnings coming into Australia.
Yeah.
So they see it as the lucky country, a new place, a new time, and for their families to come and migrate here for better opportunities. And so I really feel that for new migrants coming to Australia, it's a very good practice for them to get to know the country that they are going to be living, working and studying their new life. And when I say that as a respectful way of making sure they get to know the clan group or tribe, the Aboriginal people. If they're up the top end near the Torres Strait, find out who the traditional custodians are of that country, be respectful in learning the different stories, language of that area. And of course they carry their own language, their own kinship structures, their own different ways of living, being and doing from another country coming into Australia. But they will find that they will go further, the blessings will rain on them, I feel, spiritually, if they get to know and take the time to connect with their First Nations community.
Right. What is the First Nations response to the multicultural society that Australia has eventually become?
I can't speak for all of First Nations people, but I know for myself and my family and different friends that I talk to around this topic over the years, it has its positives and it has its negatives.
Right.
The positives is that we embrace all people. That's part of us as Aboriginal Torres Strait Island people, is that we are a sharing, respectful culture. So if you're coming from a war-torn country and you're coming to make a better life in Australia, and there's room here, Australia is a very vast, big country, there's room for a lot more people,
right,
then we want that to happen. But with that also comes where some different cultures come into Australia and disregard the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island culture, and then bring all their cultural ways in and their practices, set up all of their different communities, but no collaboration and affiliation and connection with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island communities.
Right.
So if you follow protocol and you follow those different respectful ways, like I said earlier about connecting in and getting to know your First Nations community, and finding out where the sacred sites are, finding out there's always a burial ground, there's always a women's space, there's always a men's space. Finding those out so that you're not just bulldozing through from different cultures all around the world coming into this country. Aboriginal culture is the oldest living culture in the world. So not just the physical, but the spiritual side of things plays a big part. Because we want safe passage for all people across Australia to be able to live in harmony with the land, the people, and everything around in that community.
Wow, that's amazing. And thank you for your wonderful insights. So tell me a little more about yourself.
So I walk in both worlds. So I am German. My father on my father's side is German, and on my mother's side is Kuku Yalanji, an Aboriginal traditional custodian from up in the Daintree, Far North Queensland, Port Douglas, Mossman, Cape Tribulation, all up in that area. That's where I was born and raised. And so I walk in two worlds. When I say that, I walk in the black world and the white world. And you can't switch those off. And so for me, my everyday living, being, doing is around trying to get people to understand respectfully the importance of both cultures. Whether you come from an ethnic culture or Aboriginal culture, whatever that looks like, as well as the Irish, Scottish, European, British, whatever non-Indigenous side as well, and embracing both of those and seeing that there's positive and negative in all cultures all over the world. and working together.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
I think from what we've been talking about today, one thing that I would suggest also is that when you're coming into Australia as new migrants and families and coming through, for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we want to see more brown faces in this country. We love it. And we understand, me as a light-skinned Aboriginal, I don't face racism like my 4 sons who have very dark skin. And so we understand the racism still exists here in Australia, whether we cop it firsthand or through family. But I think the way that we can break that down is through those respectful ways of people coming into Australia and making sure they don't just come through and start setting up all their own businesses and things without first being respectful and talking with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities too. You can't go wrong if you do that. And especially when it comes to, say, I do a lot of things with sporting clubs and making sure that there's a lot of Polynesians, there's a lot of different cultures in these sporting clubs, that they want all their designs put all over the jerseys and that. But where is room for the first peoples of this country?
Right.
There is room to be able to embed that together, but it's the way that you go about it and making sure that those conversations are had in a very early part of the journey here living in Australia.
Right. Awesome. It's been a pleasure having you on this episode.
Beautiful.
And that's where we come to in this episode of NAIDOC Quick. Respect, connection, and finding out the culture where you're integrating into is very important. Until next time, keep watching.